Hey, I'm with my friend Miss Amaya here with Bedside Manor and Howard Chance, and we were just talking about sleep cycles and how I have a 3 day on and 2 day down sleep cycle, and I'm burning the candle on both ends. I'm just so grateful that you're giving me the time, ma'am, and I've been looking at your work. It's beautiful. You're amazing, and it's incredible how many people you have, how many friends you have that contribute to your page. And I want to say that it's a pleasure to read your stuff, and I think you're amazing.
Oh, you're such a sweetheart.
Well, I do the best I can. Being up for 36 hours now, I think at
Oh,
least.
if you start snoozing in the middle of the our conversation.
See, and the thing is, if I would just get a alarm clock with a loud enough bell, because my phone, I can't trust my phone to wake me up, so I stay up, you know, and when I have an appointment, and then right before the appointment the other day, I fell asleep, you know, so I've got to get an alarm clock
You need the
anyway.
bells and whistle version of the alarm clock, the one that goes off multiple times.
Oh, I need that old school, really loud, wah, the wind up.
I remember back in college, there was a time when I put 3 or 4 different alarm clocks in different places in my
I've been there. I've been there. The
yeah.
best, the one thing that I can say about my cycle is that I'm on autopilot. As far as work, when I was working, um, I could, whether I was on my up cycle or down cycle, I would just go to work anyways and just do what I had to do. That was never a problem. It was just a matter of, you know, usually when I was most tired, I was most affable, most easy to get along with. But yeah, in any case, I am so happy that you're giving me the time here, and I'm so grateful that we're able to talk again.
I always enjoy talking with you, Howard.
Is there a specific thing that you'd like to talk about? Because I'm looking at your page, and it's impossible to pin you down. There's no way that I could say, any one thing would define, where you're coming from, or what you write about. You write about so many different subjects, and I was just wondering if you had one particular thing on your mind at the moment.
What an interesting question. I like the idea that you can't pin me down.
Well,
Can we pin down this? I mean, if we can, we have missed it entirely. So
right, and where's the fun in that?
yeah, I am finding the more the idea that I have zero control, the more that it just penetrates into every nook and cranny back corner of my brain, of all of the beliefs and ideas I've ever held, as they're just penetrated by that lack of control, the joy and the fun and the absolute adoration of all of humanity. Um,
yes,
which is really, I mean, there was an Amaya that had a pretty strong opinion at one point, and um, of what she felt was, loving and what wasn't. And of course, that was still assuming that there was somebody in control that could actually choose to be loving or not be loving, or to be some other expression thereof. And as that whole thing is just kind of imploded, um, the joy factor is just incredible. And I find myself, like you say, writing things from all sorts of different points of view because I don't have one anymore. And so, but of course, there were viewpoints that I was raised in that I have more knowledge about. And so some of those viewpoints come out, not viewpoints, but those buckets are part of what why I write. I mean, I wrote one again the other day from well, I wouldn't consider it a fundamental Christian point of view by any means, but from a Christian point of view. And I think it was the body of God was what the whole piece was about, was the fact that the world, myself, everything in it is the body of God. I mean, you call it God, I call it this, I call it all sorts of things. And of course, none of those words are adequate. But it's just when you begin to, some of the actually scripture makes so much more sense than it has ever made. And you begin to see that truly, the stranger, the person that we see as the stranger is, the Christ standing in front of us. So I do write in Christian terms sometimes. Sometimes I write in something that I don't know that it actually has any sort of label to it at all. My understanding is considered non-dual, but I'm not like a lot of the non-dual people out there, because I think it's all real. It's just all real in a way that we don't normally assume.
Sure.
Yeah, so for me, it's all about, there's so much pain and suffering in the world. And for me to add to that, whether in my own life or in my expression in the world, makes absolutely no sense to me anymore. And so seems like whatever's coming through always has a really positive, I hate to use that word positive because that's been so misused as well. But
right.
It's about the joy that's here and available if we can get past if we're lucky enough to get past what we believe is the way it's supposed to look.
Well, it's, I don't know. I think when you get to a certain understanding, you start to realize that no matter, who you're talking to, in the appearance of a conversation, there's not two people talking here.
Yeah.
We're not,
Nice.
we're not separate. Yeah. So really it's the totality or the wholeness or God or whatever you want to say, basically expressing itself to you, to the appearance of you. And we are ping-ponging this understanding back and forth. So really, it's not necessary to make somebody understand this as far as a conversation or trying to get somebody to be aware of non-duality. It's not a prerequisite. In fact, the reality, what I like to play with, and sometimes I can get a little blowback from unconditional non-dualists, so to speak, those the appearance of such. They will say, they'll correct me and say, what are you doing speaking to this religious person or to this, person that thinks they're psychic or whatever dualist genre they might be representing. And to me, I'm just looking at wholeness, reacting to my ridiculous, notion of self. And it's once you see that expression as truly not separate, you can see that communication not being information passing back and forth, but literally an expression of the totality in just different configurations, and it's beautiful. And yeah, so it's actually kind of mind-numbingly, how should I say, stunting to
While there
constantly.
is one, well, not two, I don't know, I love the terminology, I play with the but while there is one gorgeous diamond, it has a gazillion facets.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
doesn't make it any more 3, 4, 5. It makes it just a, goodness gracious, what fun would it be to be here in a body if it was all like us?
Right. It was, the understanding that it doesn't necessarily mean that, well, in fact, it can mean anything as far as non-duality is to the individual, to the character. It could be the entire spectrum, the entire gambit within a second. You can feel all things, within that, appearance of the self and the observer and observed. You can see all mundane and just unspeakable beauty,
all in the
simultaneously.
same thing.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful. That I see no reason to limit the apparent other, their story, their story, or what they appear to be going through within their emotional feedback,
That's what I did. I limited what viewpoints I would accept
right.
prior to my understanding shifting.
Yeah.
And that was what I would call misery and suffering.
Yeah. It was truly uncomfortable, right?
Oh, horrible.
I mean, I can't say this, I can't do that. I have to watch out about the non-duality police and all this other kind of crazy stuff. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
And even the people that I would have conversations with, what I would have conversations with them about. And then there was also this judgment that was implicit.
Yeah, like somehow.
Which then automatically made me into a separate being.
Right.
I mean, that's how I clung on to my separation, was by judging others. And when you begin to see that and you realize, oh, wow, I'm doing it to myself.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. Right. You're tying yourself into the contraction of that illusion, and in its negation, you are actually making it more prevalent. It seems that way, and I don't know. It seems that I don't know about you. I feel sure you must get this. That is, when you're not trying to change somebody's mind, and you're really interested in their story, and you're just curious about how they're navigating this thing we call life, and you listen to them, they're far more apt to listen to what you're saying, with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to change your mind here, and just as you don't need to change mine, we could just have a discussion about these different pointers, that are both incorrect, obviously.
I think there was a time I needed people to agree with me.
Right. Yes.
In order to validate myself, because I had a poor sense of myself.
Sure.
And the more that I really don't, it's not that I don't care, I don't mind your expression. In fact, most of the times I celebrate your expression. Now, I'm not talking about you specifically. There's still a part here that doesn't necessarily celebrate what I see as people doing harm to themselves and to others. Now, the question is there such a thing as harm? That's a whole nother, I mean, no, there isn't. But we're here in bodies. We've been given the opportunity, we're given it, created it, whatever term you want to make. I don't think that I had any control over it. This individual had no control over that. But if I see people hurting other people, I realize that they're hurting themselves, or they wouldn't be hurting somebody else. And ultimately, the hurt is part of the playground, the training ground. I mean, we can't have this world of what apparent duality without it.
Yeah.
There's still a part of my heart, my compassion, that is really not triggered anymore, but it is activated in a way that just makes more compassion and more love seem to flow out. I think that's just the part of my nature. my design. My part of the picture is that when I see people hurting, I just love them more. And it's hard right now. We're in such a where the dualism nature of the design of the dream, whatever you want to call it, is really activated right now, triggered right now. And so we're seeing so much of that. And not loving the ones who are hurting, that are causing others to hurt and themselves, is just adding more hurt to the whole thing, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So I mean, it's really what I think we're, those of us who are awakening, those of us who are just on a spiritual path and still think we have some place to get. That's the lesson, is how to love this as it is.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. So how do you, you're saying that there's like a heaven?
No, I'm not saying there's a heaven.
Are you saying, as a non-dualist?
I'm saying there's a heaven, but it is in my absolute recognition that I have no control. That I can be in the same exact experience as somebody else who's having the experience with me, and I could be standing there in heaven while they'll be in hell.
Yeah.
But that's because I have no objection to it looking the way it does, but my heart is activated to become even bigger rather than closing down when that happens.
I see it as a collaboration at times. Ironically, as an appearance, you don't know how, no matter how many people are in the scenario, let's say, in the context of somebody's hurting somebody. The entire gambit is basically displaying the totality, and there's no, you can play a part, and you can get caught up in your story. You can get caught up in the morals and the right and the wrong and the judgment and all of that kind of thing. But I do it. Everybody does it. But it's being able to take a step back and look at what's happening as a whole. Look at the entire story and try to take your own bit of it, as you would look at it as anybody else's bit. Don't look at yourself as any more or less important, or a focal point in which you can cast the first stone, so to speak. But look at your own, look at yourself as you would anybody else in an argument, or in a situation where you might have to stop somebody from hurting somebody or something like that. It's simple but profound, in that I would want to try to stop somebody from hurting somebody. And I don't like people, hurting, I don't like bullies, and I don't like, people picking on weaker people, whether it be intellectually, or physically, or whatever. I just don't feel comfortable. And I don't have to get really philosophical about that. I can just, without judgment, say, look, this is just not,
this is not good.
Yeah, this is not good.
It's not good.
But at the same,
from compassion, we're moved into action. But I mean, as long as the action that we're taking isn't about, the separate self, as far as
it's
how I feel as a separate self, and the threat or the harm or whatever. If we're acting from the understanding of what's real, then we still act. We still do. My heart just explodes in compassion, and then I'm moved into some sort of action, and I never know what the action is going to be.
Right.
I mean, it could literally be just putting my hand on the shoulder of the little kid who's getting berated in the grocery store. It may not be a word at all, but it might be. Or ask the parent, are you having a bad day? In today's world, it's we have so many opportunities to do this. But I think that the key is just for those people who are finding themselves in and out of understanding, where it hasn't really fully integrated in yet. It's really the question I think that's really important to ask is, who am I acting from? Am I acting from my own fear?
Yeah.
In which case, then it's time for us to investigate that.
Yeah.
But and actually, it may be legitimate fear too. Who knows? I mean, so it's just everything's real, nothing's real, and it's all intermixed so completely that we don't, to say we do the work. I think we talked about this last time, the neti work to get to the recognition that I of myself am not, and then after that happens, after that really becomes a true understanding, and I don't know that we actually do the work. This does the work for us, since there is no I doing it. But then it's integrated back into what appears to be a person, and from that we take that love and compassion and caring and understanding out into the world. In other words, what's the point?
Right. And sometimes your role ends up being a Doberman. I mean, it literally, sometimes it's not so much the judgment of stopping something, but just the stopping of it, by whatever means necessary, without judgment, and,
Right.
and try to step back but the stopping of it, must occur,
Can be a smile, as little as a smile that's interjected into, or it can literally be just the energy of love that washes over everybody, and all of a sudden things are just stop. Gosh, I don't know how I've been around enough violence in my life. I wish that I would have understood a lot of this a long time ago, because to understand that it's not okay to be abusive to another person, and to have somebody actually, to honor that in yourself. I was really good at honoring it in everybody else. Everybody else had the right to be who they were, but I didn't have the right to be hurt, because I was on a spiritual path, and I had to do all those things, and it took me a long time in my on my journey to get to the point where I went, no, wait a minute, I'm part of the whole. I get to be included here too.
Yeah, I think I've the funny thing about it's not like a will or a decision of your own, but the funny thing is, for example, I've treated my body horribly all the way through my life. I've never treated it with respect whatsoever. I've always thrown caution to the wind, and never even, and I've actually had this feeling all my, for many decades, that the moment that I try to hold on is when it will disappear. And so I've always gone the opposite direction. I've just thrown caution to the wind, and actually gone towards, taking chances and risking. And the thing about that is, now that I'm there, suffering the consequences of a lot of those actions, a lot of it had to do with literally throwing your body into the middle of a scuffle or something like that, without any concern for what was going to happen. And you just never realize it, until you're older, that kind of stuff tends to stick with you. But I don't know what I'm trying to say there. The contracting of the physical body, and just what you were saying about what that means exactly in regards to your story, and all of that other kind of stuff.
I didn't understand that what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. was that this body was going to learn how to be a flow device for the universe. And so, because basically all experience just flows through. And I did what my own version of what you did. What I used to call it throwing myself under the God bus.
Yeah.
And I didn't care what happened to the body.
No, didn't care at all.
Which is probably why I'm dealing with some physical physical issues today. The heart finally said,
Right.
"Screw you, woman."
Right.
And so now I'm learning that piece as far as the understanding, which is so fascinating. We talked about this last time too, is that it seems like it takes time, which doesn't exist, which I find hilarious, for the body to integrate the full understanding of the truth.
Well, like for me, for example, now, before I don't want to get off that. Now, you just said something. What do you mean, the body and the truth? What is that regarding?
The truth that this is a dream, a hologram, whatever term you want to use, that it's all consciousness, including the body, including the world, including everything, and the ideas of no things. It's just this amazing conscious interplay of consciousness with itself. And for the body to get that, to release all of its old beliefs,
right,
all of the things that it's been taught from this lifetime and probably 100 lifetimes prior or more, all of the beliefs in the physicality and cause and effect, and if I eat this food, this will be good for me. If I eat that food, it'll be bad for me. If I take this medicine, it's going to have this side effect. If I don't take this medicine, I'll die. All of these sorts of belief systems that we've integrated into the body just by living, just by the programming of society. And it takes, leastwise it has here, and maybe I'm just really slow, or I've always found myself to be a little bit unique, and I'm not necessarily not always in a fun way, but but I have found, for me anyway, that a lot of that old body programming, even though I absolutely get it on all of the levels, including the body itself has held on to some of those old, is slowly releasing some of those old beliefs. So
well, listen to this part of my story. This is hilarious. In being the kind of the black sheep of the family, in that, my family was, very healthy, sporty, and though I did love the sport, and I was very outgoing and everything, my brother and I used to love to just do all kinds of stuff. He was very much, a healthy person, and most of the men in my family were, and I'm the last one. I'm the last one alive, and there was the irony of it being that I've just never taken care of myself, and everybody has always told me, you got to take care of yourself. I never thought I'd last this long, ever. And in that way, I feel, it's just a weird aspect of my story, but it is my story, in that I feel as if, if I do start, trying to get better, or trying to, in whatever way, eat healthy or XYZ, what will happen is that it'll all be taken away. It's an ironic part of the story, but that is my story, in that, all the men of my family are gone, and for various different reasons that had nothing to do with health. Or all of a sudden, you get stricken down by some crazy illness. Perfectly healthy people that just, cancer, all of it, heart attacks, strokes, suicide, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And for me to be the last one alive is kind of an indicator to me in my story that, you know, it's just an ironic thing. So that is something that I have to contend with, you know, like when I am dealing with, you know, that perspective of what is right or wrong in regards to the body and what should be done.
I think it's fascinating because the way it works here is it's the body and the whole, what I call the holdouts in the body that still believe in cause and effect and duality. Mm-hmm. They are like a Dharma bell for me, because every time that I take my body seriously, which when I take it seriously, that means I take it to be a separate thing,
yeah,
made of matter with its own thing. Whenever I take it seriously, it responds seriously.
Yeah.
It will immediately, I mean, I can literally have a thought about my sinuses and a thought goes through or whatever. And if I buy into that on the body level mm-hmm. at all, I'll mm-hmm. have my sinuses start dripping. And I mean, I could probably sit here and create 5 or 6 or 7 different medical conditions just by Absolutely. Thinking about them and saying, yeah, that's possible or that's real.
I 100% agree. I contract as I speak on it, or as soon as I, you know, start thinking about that aspect of the story, I suddenly am contracting, like my muscles start, you know, tightening up, and I, you know, I start feeling all the different little blah blah blahs that you know. I mean, I'm an old man. I could sit there in my rocking chair and just talk about my illnesses all day long.
I don't know I don't know the full message of what it's trying to tell us. This is trying to show, because I'm not a big, you know, thoughts create reality sort of person. When The Secret came out, I went, oh my God, you guys are missing a whole bunch of it. And I'm not even, you know, Law of Attraction's another one that's out there, and I'm not a big Law of Attraction person at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not real sure yet. It's just like I'm watching this play in front of me, and I've got the script, and I'm reading the script in advance, and then I'm seeing the play. And I don't know if it's just a foreshadowing of what's getting ready to happen. Yeah. I have no idea, but I find it fascinating to watch, and I figure one of these days it may let me in on the joke. At this point, you know, I'm not fully in on the joke yet on that particular one, but
and you know, yeah, and that's the joke. I think a friend of mine was talking about telepathy the other day, and she really thought that I was going to spend a lot of time, you know, debunking telepathy. And I'm like, telepathy is the story. I mean, if you have, you know, whether you think you have telepathy or not is irrelevant to the, you know, to the indicator that it's a story, and that, you know, it arises with us in it as, you know, as characters in the play. The play is already written, so to speak, but simultaneously it's spontaneous, but it's got us in it. It's kind of like smoke coming from a fire, you know, it's already there, you know. It's you're saying, well, that, you know, that ring of smoke should be different, you know. It's impossible, it's already done, you know. So we even saying, you know, anything is impossible, but I do understand that. Yeah, it's
I think the key is to not try to make it mean anything.
Right, and
just to let it just. I mean, in that particular instance, it felt like I was both a character in the movie as well as somebody sitting and watching the movie. Yeah. And so, okay, in that particular moment, both were happening. Oh well.
Yeah, and then also like I'm painting the screen, I'm painting the scenery in the background. You know, I'm the projectionist. I'm the guy in the audience. I'm an extra. I'm the donkey over to the corner. I mean, it's literally passing around that kind of the sense of coming from a place. The consciousness to me is the illusion of separation, and that portal becomes less constrictive sometimes, you know, when
Yeah.
you realize that it's not you thinking, but just thought arising as a you that thinks. And
Exactly.
so that story of a self, you can kind of detach from that character that thinks that the oculus from which it sees is the end all be all to all perception, you know, and you know, you don't exist, but immediate experience is all there is. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, come
Just the
on.
way the game's
So-
being played in the moment.
right, and you know, the character is trying to write the play that it's already in. You know,
Right.
you can't. So it's impossible to even approach, you know, any question in that nature is impossible.
I just had
Simply
a
by the
picture
nature.
of, as you said that, I just had a picture of somebody sitting in the theater, of course, the theater of life. And there are
Yeah.
stories up there on the screen, and they're sitting there with the script, and they've got an eraser, and they're trying very hard to erase that particular part of the script.
Right. Well, and then there's also the beautiful analogy of the character leaving, you know, leaving the movie or the book they're in, and you know, going into the dimension of the audience or what have you. And I love to use the screen analogy or the projector analogy. You can use light and you know, it's subject object, and you can use all kinds of different metaphors, and you can use science, and you can, like you were
I
saying.
like the movie and the film and the light and all of those. There's just so many beautiful moving parts to that one that just kind of fits. So I like that one as well.
You were saying earlier your character could be flighty from time to time or something like that, and I wanted to say, yeah, my mother used to call that artistic. Your
like
character
that.
is artistic.
I like that one. I have an artsy sort of you know,
Right.
sense of self, especially more so the artist is being freed, has been freed within. There, when I was growing up, the artist was much more in a cage, more like a bird in a cage than it was an artist, a free artist with the capabilities of, you know, creating anything. But I cared too much what people thought, and I mean, it was part of the role that I was playing at the time. I was playing the role of, I mean, it was all perfect because you look at it and you go, wow, without that, you know, maybe I wouldn't, but I wasn't doing any of these things anyway. So then you sit there and you go, well, it just was, you know, it just was. I wish it would have been fun to have known what I know today back then, but then again, maybe it wouldn't have been. Maybe it was absolutely perfect the way it was. So
Can I press you? I'm gonna ask you something that and please tell me if it's just not fair. But I know that there's something, or it appears to me that there's something that you want to articulate regarding a God. And if you were
regarding
to
what?
a God, if you
A
were to
God.
close your eyes and just shut your and allow whatever comes to your mind or come to your mouth, what would you like to say about a God, a source, or what have you?
A God. It's a word that I use because I like it. Because I think it's got a lot of, yeah, it's got a lot of baggage attached to it, but it's also a word that when people's hearts are breaking and they're in the hospital room or the foxhole or whatever, that something in us just knows there's something more than us. And I like the word because it reaches into that part of us that knows, even when we deny that we know, the part of us that would make deals with God in order to save a loved one's life. I used to have this vision when my husband was sick with cancer. And I had this vision. In fact, I had this dream night after night after night, and it was of this little girl who I knew was me, chasing down, looked like a school corridor. Boy, it's funny how that smell comes up with even just the mention of that. But out in front of me, and they were always out in front of me, I could never quite catch up to them, was these beings of light. And I knew that if I could catch up to these beings of light, I could save Ken. But in my mind, it was just, that was at a time when I didn't understand the game. I didn't understand how this whole thing worked. And my desperation to keep him on the planet was creating a separation, was creating an idea that he could be someplace other than here and other than now, that I could lose, that he could be harmed, that I could be harmed. But there was something in me still, whether it was the foxhole, once again, or the school corridor, that knew there was something more. And this was showing up in the dream. And the thing is for the people who have already recognized, people who have recognized their nature, what's going on here. This is not an important message at all. It's only an important message to the ones who are still think they're searching, because that which I know this has been said before, but people are much more eloquent than I, but that which they're searching for is actually searching for them. Because that is that knowing that we have inside of us, and I call that God. I call it's that's partly of what I call God. I know what I call God is the whole darn enchilada, but see if there's anything else that wants to be said.
Can I jump in here? For me, it appears that God can be referred to, particularly in this case, it seems like you're referring to what can't be spoken. I mean, essentially the lack of separation. Words, they're duplicitous. We are, with the appearance of, we're the appearance of two people. There's no way that we can say the lack of separation. There you go with your biblical thing. You cannot say the word of God. Well, it's because it's the lack of separation, and you can't say that in a word because words are duplicitous.
Impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. So in that analogy, I can kind of see what you're saying. In that, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what speaker that you can, the most ardent, whatever, nouveau non-dualist, unconditional, whatever have you, they, atheists, such and such, essentially all say the same thing, that they don't know exactly, they can't know, they don't know, and it's not a teaching, and you can't say what is, and blah 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 blah, so you could, using the word God there, it seems rational to me, for me, it came down kind of a little different in that immediately for lack of a better word or lack of a better phrase within the story, it just you can, the words came, you can, no, I'm not God, but you can call me God if you like, you can call me God if you want, but I'm not what you think God is. And that's kind of what I've always stuck with. It's not a deity, it's not a thing. It has nothing to do with that, and it's got nothing to do with what people usually, refer to as God. But then there you go. I mean, that's what else is, what else are you going to call that? God, right? So it's a matter of, do you want to walk all the way around to say one thing or another? Do I want to have to explain every time, we talk about these subjects, these things? Sometimes you have to. It just depends on the person you're talking to and where you want to go with the conversation. But ultimately, I think what you're saying when you say God is that which cannot be referred to, that which cannot be spoken of, and that which literally is beyond the limitation of the character within the story, you know. And to say that you can know anything like that is, you know, I would like to know how you know that, you know. How do you, how do you know, anything like that? You can't. But at the same,
It's something that we just know, but it's not known. It's that feeling in the heart that we just know that there's, it's once again, it's, it goes
that
back to those moments in our lives when we've been pulled, compelled, like a magnet, pulling us into places and things and ideas and thoughts that we never, ever, ever thought we would.
inconceivable.
Yeah.
And well, so the thing is that to go further with that, I view, any kind of God type, whatever, within my paradigm, my character's paradigm, doesn't refer to anything regarding a source. It's not a mechanism. It literally is not dimensional at all. In that, you can call it whatever you like, but this is literally this is spontaneous. It does not require anything. But that is not to say that it is limiting, limiting anything at all. And it's not saying it is one thing or another. But I don't, it's so difficult to talk about on these levels. But I think we are saying kind of the same thing in that
I think we are, Howard. I use the
Yeah.
word this a lot as well.
Yeah.
This, it's
What can you do? This encompasses everything that you can't talk about. This encompasses everything beyond language. So when you say it's just this, what that means is that everything that you can't even say. So and that is everything that you've ever even slipped by a notion. Yeah. Or all of that. And that is just the character again within the story, trying to understand some kind of mechanism or reason or purpose. And it's not about that. It's not even it has nothing to do with how or why or when or what.
Well,
that's
it's all thing based. I mean, that's your anthropomorphic version of God, and that one went by the wayside so many years ago. It's ridiculous, but
it's hard to let go. Though those stories they're brutal when the memory of an individual. I notice in quite in a literal sense. I see within just like you were talking about conditioning and stuff like that around the world, within that story of time and space and people's memories, to drill people early about this guilt and good and bad, and it's just so awful, and it seems to permeate a lot of the people I talk to.
It's cultural too, because you don't even have to be raised in a religion that gives you that sort of an anthropomorphic version of God to have its effects in your life. I know a lot of people who had no religious upbringing whatsoever, but they have you can really understand how they have integrated the culture's belief system, which have it just interwoven. There's just no hard. It's almost impossible to get around it without doing an awful lot of work along the path of getting past your own beliefs and your own thoughts.
Well, yeah, isn't it easier to feel those basic emotions rather than that tetherless notion of literally it being beyond the grasp, or just the notion that there is something solid to hold on to, and to be able to go, I mean, I'm using loose language here, but to go to that place of not letting go or holding on, and to that place where you can't describe. And yeah, that's the story.
I think you're right, because I think that tetherless place absolutely untethered
Yeah.
to anything, including God, this
Pe-
God, this
yeah.
person,
Yeah.
is, and even the idea once you die, you're going to have this body with you, or a body with you that's going to be
Right.
all of a sudden you're magically killed and all those kinds of things.
Right.
Because that's still hanging on to some sort of tether.
Yeah.
And
Like as if what you're going through right now is in fact actual and relevant.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I had let go of so many different levels before I finally got to the recognition of, oh shit, there's nothing to hang on to. That it didn't really even bother me, because it was like, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
It just became a duh. And why didn't you see that before, you idiot?
Yeah.
And before though, but I had gone through so many iterations over the period of time of letting go of this and letting go of that, that it just finally became the point where it was ridiculous not to admit what was so.
Well, and I see you're working that way, and that I think the different styles and the different things that you point to, I think are indicative of those levels of, you know, whatever unraveling. And so you're talking to different peoples along those different stages of X, Y, and Z. And
it's always
within
interesting who's interested too in what I write, because it seems like it's a different group based on on the particular angle that's coming through, and it's always just a pointer. I mean, that's all it is. That's all anything is. It's just a pointer to hey, how about this?
Yeah.
If it applies to you and you like it, use it. If not, hey, I don't know why I write what I write. I just write what I write. I mean, it's not even, like we've talked before, it's not even me writing. So you sit there and you just go, Sometimes I write and I just go, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to fight. I have to literally fight myself not to, I mean, to not change it. You know, I mean, I constantly want to change it, and, you know, and I do. I work on them. I do. But a lot of times it's almost, it's funny, but I must admit it. It's almost like a fear comes out when the more honest it is, the more fear based. Like, I'm afraid to actually post this because this is actually from the heart. And if it does get, you know, when people don't get it, it's like, you know, you're truly on your own in that respect.
Those are the times when the least amount of people are interested generally in what I'm writing.
Yeah.
The more real, the more powerful it is, the less people are interested. So
you'll get two hits, and the one that you didn't want to put out because it's so, you know, powder puff, will get 50 hits. You know, well, I mean, but in that respect, that's beautiful too. You get to talk to people that you've never met before. You get new people that are like, hey, it's not so hardcore. You know, they can still kind of hide behind some of the beliefs and this and that, and you can kind of have new conversations with new people. And in that way, it does serve. It does.
Yeah, it's always serving whatever good that this wants it to serve. So
right.
And it's so funny. Sometimes it's just playful, and I mean, like it was today when I added onto your poem.
that was beautiful, by the way.
Like, okay.
Yeah, that was beautiful, by the way. Thank you very much. That was gorgeous.
I read what you wrote, and it was just like I had the rest of it.
Right. I do that. I do that a lot with Nancy Nethercutt. Like for some reason, I'll get on these like poetry tangents, you know, like every couple of weeks or so, and I'll just start. They'll just come out, you know, and I'll, you know, there are several people that on Facebook that I could do this with, Pedro and Kim and you, and basically it's fun when you start doing that with other people that like to be carefree with the pen.
Kim McCluskey, I've done that with before. I think I've done that with before too. I love the stuff he writes.
I love that guy, man. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah, he reminds me of like I want to say haiku master in a Viking body. You know what I mean? He looks like a Viking, but he actually writes like a like a Zen master. It's amazing, great stuff. The combination of yeah, it's very I want to say he paints a picture. You know, it's
He does.
yeah.
He really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few amazing quills. Quills is the only term that I can use that I read on because it's it's not them, it's not us. It's we're just the quill
Yeah.
and or the keyboard or whatever you want to call it. But it's sometimes I just I'm sitting back and my fingers are just typing away, and I just go, gee, where are you going?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have a much better clear. I get to maybe somewhat participate, but not very much.
Yeah.
It's,
There's usually the and I think Kim said this the same thing. There's at least one line that just comes out. The one line will there'll be the picture of a line or a few words, and then from that it just goes. And and from there you can just kind of
I'll usually like hear a phrase, and then I just know that I have to write it. Right. And that I'm going to write it. Not that I have to, that I'm going to. It's not, there's no choice involved. And it's already writing itself before I even hardly sit down. So it's just a kick in the pants to live this way. I feel such gratitude for the grace because I certainly didn't deserve it or earn it. I've definitely not paid for it. And regardless of, no one can pay for it. You can't buy it.
No. You can't buy it, and you can't see. And this is the brutal part of it. So hard to say, but it's not knowledge. You can't learn it. You can't understand it. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You can't. It's not something that's earned. It's not. It just doesn't have anything to do with that at all. And it can't be shared, or it has nothing to do with anything regarding consciousness. When people say, consciousness is everything. I understand what they mean. But everything to what? Everything to that story, and to that story, the misnomer is that the story has a center or a beginning, and it just goes round and round in circles, like a dog chasing his tail. And that is what the self is to me, the mind, self, brain circle. And for lack of a better word, prior to that, it arises with that in the story, in what's happening. So it is the appearance of an individual that thinks they think. And I know it's ridiculous sounding, but what it does is it frees you from that loop of that consciousness loop where I am the pinnacle of what is. And it's just once you realize that's how ridiculous that notion is, that consciousness is, somehow the entire universe is a mechanism based on that same unvalidated assumption, from nowhere to nothing. It's essentially just saying, like, I am everything. Well, yeah, of course, but what is I, what is, and what is everything? I mean, from that.
We gotta define some language in order to. I mean, and if you look at it from the standpoint of the circle, it's a circle where the center is everywhere.
Yeah.
And there is no circumference, no edges to that circle. I mean, it literally is everywhere in the center. I mean, it is. I've got this picture of a bunch of interlocking. Well, it's a fractal. Interesting. The circles with all of the fractal, with all
Right.
of the circles out of the circles out of the circles, and I love fractals. Fractals are just fun to look at anyway. But and to see in nature and to see, you know, everywhere. I mean, everything is fractalized, and yeah, it's try to put this one in words. That'll keep us busy for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Well, I had an interesting one that came to me the other day. You cannot, you know, you can't, you can't. Let me see, what is this? You can't escape this, and you can't contain it. You can't escape it.
I saw that one that you wrote. I loved it. I loved it. Yeah.
It's
not
simultaneous.
Be escaped, not be contained. The paradox. I mean, the paradox is not a paradox, because once the joke is clear, it's of course.
Yeah.
Of course it's true. I mean, it is exactly true. It cannot be escaped and cannot be contained.
It's so amazing. And and there you get into the complexity of you get into the paradox of character, and you know what actually, you know, just what actually seems real. The words, like you were saying, I mean, you literally start losing dimension or description. Definitions are, you know, not only are not prescriptive, they're not even descriptive anymore. I mean, every conversation must have its own vocabulary, and even that is absolutely lacking.
Well, yeah, because the vocabulary and the understanding of the words is going to be based on the way this particular model of the world is seeing things. And we could say the exact same word and say the exact same definition, and neither one of us would have the same clue as to what the other person's talking about.
And within the context of a sentence, you can use the same word two completely opposite ways,
right?
And be right and equally wrong both times. You know, it doesn't. You know, they literally, once they appear to be spoken, they've lost all meaning to any other conversation, or you know, the depths of the context in which the words are spoken in that moment are their own definition, and they speak for themselves, but cannot be repeated. It
just becomes a fun game. And if you don't really care whether you win or lose at this fun game, then it just becomes a joy. And I find myself loving it, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. And my life has its physical challenges. It's got a bunch of stuff going on that people would say, well, that's not cool. But you know what? Somebody mentioned something to me the other day. She says, well, this is all fine and well, but what about for those people that are living in a war zone?
Yeah.
And I went, well, my life is a war zone.
Yeah.
And I explained to her, in my war, it looks like this.
Right.
And I've come to peace with my war. War is, sometimes it actually looks like a war, sometimes it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I'm at peace with it. What would happen in our world if we could come to peace with the idea of the wars? Maybe we'd find a different way to war against each other. And so, life is just what it is. And looking out and saying, well, I want that version.
Yeah. Well, there's just another way to suffer. The moment you need something, that is just another way to suffer.
It's funny that I couldn't figure that out a long time ago. It took me suffering and coming to the point of absolute futility before I'd finally give up my grip on no, there's gotta be
There's gotta be,
way.
yeah, there's gotta be some reality to this. And even the funny thing is that even the idea that you can want or you can need is already the
game.
it's already the game. Yeah. It's and so the do not do of it, the do not do of the holding on to that slippery just untangible, it's not a thing you can hold on to. So letting you can't even let it go or hold on to it. And in that beautiful song, it just occurs, all the characters, I think, in some way, I'll use some flowery language and just say maybe maybe the character can can actually take part in the audience and take part in the in painting the
little lucid waking instead of lucid dreaming, a little lucid waking.
Well, and why not? Why not?
I find it quite enjoyable.
Right.
And the old life previous, it's funny, when you were talking about that, I saw a picture of, when you get shocked and you're holding on to something and you can't let go of it.
Right.
Life until all of a sudden, whatever it was that was powering that particular shock is pulled from the game. We're going to hang on. We can't let go. And so we hang on until we don't.
Yeah. And that's, I think more of the mundane aspect of it, though, I mean, or I'll equate it to that. In a sense, I'm not to say that I don't get caught up in the story and I get angry and frustrated and stuff like that too, but I can actually see it for what it is. Even as I'm getting angry, I'm like, I'm looking at myself going, what am I doing?
And you start laughing, and you just start laughing.
Yeah.
Remember, I was out of town and my car started breaking down, and the brakes were going out. It was all electrical, and I went, "You can't do this to me!" And then I started laughing, and I said, "Oh, I guess you can."
Yeah. It can always get worse,
It can always get worse.
Well, that's something that the appearance always shows in some way, shape, or form. There's always that that threat of immediate demise, or some.
Well, that's part of the game here. I mean, what fun would the game be without that? And what's interesting, we talked about how inherent the whole concept of God is in society. When that thing with my car went out, what I said? You can't do that to me. Automatic in that was God was doing something to me.
Oh, sure.
And the thing is, God wasn't doing anything. Well, yeah, God's doing everything, but
right.
they're me, you, the whole thing. I mean, there's nothing but, if you want to use the word God, okay, God is this. God is all there is. There's nothing but God. This alone is. Yeah.
God is Godding.
God is Godding. Yep, exactly. Life is lifing. God is Godding. This is thising.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is that way. And so that's yeah. I think I let that kind of slip away a little bit, but that's just another one that got away. The whole, limiting the character, and then not having the ability to limit the character, and just this expressing itself as it will.
Just all is. Yeah. Resistance to resistance, resistance to the resistance to resistance. Or the surrender, the full and utter surrender. It's all just this doing itself.
Right. Yeah. And I've been using this stream analogy lately, where it's like the little whirlpool eddies on the side of the stream that think that their entire existence, they think that everything revolves around what that whirlpool is, without realizing that it's just a consequence of. See you later, Tasha. Thank you. it is just the consequence of the appearance of the river. It's a ridiculous thing, but
one of the many
anyway.
appearances of the river.
Yeah, and so the whirlpool trying to describe the ocean.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So I want to say thank you so much. It's been a little over an hour. I want to keep these things a little shorter. I've been getting a lot of complaints, and I think I want this one to be seen. So I'll let it out.
Oh, it was fun. I always enjoy talking to you. You're a kick in the pants.
Hey, right back at you, Amaya, and hopefully maybe we can do it again, about the same interval.
You just never know what's going to happen, do you?
Lovely. I love your attitude. And I hope to see you really soon.
Okay. You take care, sweetheart.
You too, babe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.